Australia has once again dug deep into its pockets for its Pacific neighbour, Papua New Guinea. The latest act of generosity, a hefty loan of 570 million Australian dollars. This significant sum, announced in early February 2025, marks the fifth loan Australia has extended to PNG since 2020. In total, that's over 3 billion AUD in budget support, flowing from Canberra to Port Moresby in just a few short years. On the surface, it seems like a lifeline for PNG. The money is earmarked for essential services and budget repair, helping to keep the country's economy afloat. But as with any financial arrangement, especially one of this magnitude, it's important to look beyond the headlines. What are the strings attached to this helping hand? And what does Australia hope to gain from this billion-dollar bet? The timing of this loan is particularly interesting, coinciding with Australia's push for stricter foreign investment scrutiny in PNG. This has led some to question whether the loan is simply a tool to secure greater influence over PNG's economic future. To understand the motivations behind this loan, we need to consider the economic and political landscape of Papua New Guinea. PNG is blessed with natural resources, particularly in mining and petroleum. However, it faces significant challenges, including corruption, weak governance, and vulnerability to natural disasters. These factors create an environment of economic instability, making it difficult for PNG to attract foreign investment and achieve sustainable growth. This is where Australia comes in. As a close neighbour with historical ties to PNG, Australia has a vested interest in seeing a stable and prosperous PNG. A strong PNG benefits Australia economically and strategically. It reduces the likelihood of regional instability, stemming the flow of refugees and minimising security risks. Australia also sees PNG as a key partner in its efforts to counter the growing influence of China in the Pacific. Australia's concerns about Chinese investment in PNG are no secret. China has been aggressively pursuing infrastructure projects in the Pacific, often offering loans with favourable terms that developing nations find hard to resist. Australia worries that these projects could give China a strategic foothold in the region, potentially compromising Australia's national security interests. The spectre of China looms large over this latest loan agreement. While neither government has explicitly mentioned China, it's clear that countering Chinese influence is a key driver of Australia's Pacific policy. In recent years, China has significantly increased its investment in PNG, particularly in infrastructure, mining and retail. This has raised alarm bells in Canberra. Australia sees Chinese investment in critical infrastructure, such as ports and telecommunications, as a potential threat to its national security. There are concerns that China could use its economic leverage to gain undue political influence in PNG, potentially undermining Australia's strategic interest in the region. The loan, therefore, can be seen as part of Australia's broader strategy to compete with China for influence in the Pacific. By providing PNG with much-needed financial assistance, Australia aims to reduce PNG's reliance on Chinese loans and investment, thereby safeguarding its own strategic interests. However, this approach has drawn criticism from some quarters. Critics argue that it risks pushing PNG further into debt and could be perceived as a form of economic coercion. They argue that Australia should focus on providing more aid and technical assistance to PNG rather than relying on loans that could exacerbate PNG's debt burden. There's no denying that Australia's loan is a gamble, a calculated risk in the high-stakes game of geopolitics. While intended to bolster PNG's economy and counter Chinese influence, it's not without its critics. Some experts argue that this reliance on loans, even with favourable terms, is unsustainable and could lead to a debt trap for PNG. They point to the risk of PNG becoming overly reliant on Australian aid, hindering its long-term economic development. Others question the effectiveness of this strategy in countering Chinese influence. They argue that simply throwing money at the problem won't address the underlying issues that make PNG vulnerable to Chinese overtures. Instead, they advocate for a more nuanced approach, one that focuses on strengthening PNG's governance, improving its business environment, and promoting sustainable development. Alternatives to the loan strategy include increasing direct Australian investment in PNG, fostering closer trade ties, and providing targeted technical assistance to build PNG's capacity in key sectors. Empowering PNG to achieve genuine economic independence, they argue, is a more sustainable and ethical approach than engaging in a zero-sum game of influence peddling. The billion-dollar question is whether this latest loan will prove to be a shrewd investment in regional stability or a costly misstep that pushes PNG further into debt and dependence. Only time will tell.